This is a little tip if you're investing in property. Call the local pizza places, and if they won't deliver into the neighborhood, you might use that as a barometer as to whether or not to invest there.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
Hello and welcome to episode 64. When you consider your role as a rental property owner or investor, do you see yourself as a landlord or as a business owner? Today, I talk with Joe Delia, who has owned, renovated, and managed 12 rental units in 4 states. So you could consider him to be a landlord. But that is only a small part of Joe's story, because he's also built a highly successful business in real estate as the owner of the Delia Group, a Keller Williams realty agency which is in the top 10 in the state of Michigan with over $65 million in sales last year. The Delia Group has 3 offices in Northville, Royal Oak, and Rochester, Michigan, and Joe is also part of Gary Keller's exclusive mastermind group, which is for the top business agents in the world. Joe is also the president of Dream Investment Properties, and he sits on the board of trustees for his local Real Estate Investors Association. Joe, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thanks. Appreciate the opportunity.
I can't wait to get into talking about how you built your successful business in real estate. But before we do, I'd like to go back to 2008. You were graduating from Central Michigan University, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And you were graduating during one of the worst times in recent history to go out into the work world. Can you take us back to that point and what was going through your mind as you were graduating?
You know, for me, my degree is in entrepreneurship and marketing. So, frankly, my degree really had very little to what I was doing at the time, or very little in what I'm doing today. I mean, it's exactly what I'm doing, but had very little impact. If anything, what college did was introduce me to some people that I'm still really good friends with and are in business, different businesses today. So I always knew at the time, whether it was 2008 or any other time, when I was in college, I ran one of the most successful student painting businesses in the country. I actually broke sales records that were over 20 years, and I had broke sales records selling paint jobs, and I had never painted anything in my life. So that was a definitely fake it till you make it type situation. And so one summer I made $40,000 in 4 months. And so I've always been a person, it really doesn't matter what the market's doing. There's always opportunity for those willing to take it. So 2008, actually, I was living in California. And one of the guys I met in that student painting business approached me about an opportunity in which to get involved with a cash for gold company. And so literally what we did was we would take about $10,000 and go in some of the nicest houses in California and some of the worst houses in California, and we would buy people's scrap gold for cash. And it was pretty much, we would test purity, test the weight or weigh it, and offer cash. So it was kind of like legal drug dealing, essentially. And we were wildly successful with that. We actually did $2.6 million in volume in about 7 months. So we were pushing a lot of buying a lot of gold, melting it, and selling it to, and we would sell it to different brokers in downtown LA. So 2008 was a phenomenal year for me. I think we made about $350,000 in cash that year. I mean, it was an incredible year. Until last year, we had never made that much money. So.
Well, I love to hear that. I love to hear you say that it really didn't matter to you what the market was doing because of your entrepreneurial skills. I mean, you can make money basically no matter what is going on in the economy. Where does that come from?
My family that I grew up in is the term "many hands make for a light load" was, the work ethic of the family I grew up in and the people I'm around, and the people I surround myself with are just through the roof. Some of the strongest. I just thought that was normal growing up. I didn't realize the rest of the world doesn't have that same mindset, or a lot of the world doesn't. And so, in my house when we grew up, when my dad pulled in the driveway or my mom pulled in the driveway, and it didn't matter if we were in the middle of a video game or if I had all my friends over or what was going on, everyone dropped what they were doing, ran out to the car, grabbed groceries, and there was an assembly line back into the house with all the groceries. My parents always had entrepreneurial spirit, even though they had a lot of want to, not a lot of know-how. So they were kind of serial entrepreneurs while they were teachers. So they were always starting something new. And my mom was trying to push crystal jewelry, or next thing you know, a lot of antiques, but really she just collected them, didn't really sell them. But they were always trying to start something or do something. So I think that just kind of came from it. And I kind of, growing up, I always watched those flipper shows, and I was always drawn to real estate. Actually, that's what I thought I was going to do, was be one of these flip that house guys. And it turns out I was pretty terrible at that.
Well, let's go there. Let's talk about that, because
sure.
I'd love to hear how you went from doing the flipping and getting into being a real estate investor and property owner to deciding to work with Keller Williams and start your own agency.
Yeah, I'll take you from 2008, basically, because that's when that was all going down, all the way through today, and kind of take you through the path of the decisions that were made and why they were made. So 2008, made a bunch of money in the gold business. Everything I was always doing was just a means in which to figure out a way to get into real estate. And so had a bunch of money, had a lot of want to, had very little know-how, signed up for all your stupid seminar things, Trump University and all this crap.
Okay, wait, stop right there. You were a member of Trump University? I was
a member of Trump University, yeah.
Okay, so how was that experience?
Poor. It was a poor experience. It was, during the time I was in that program, I kept going to these seminars, and I'd be in the room and I'd see the same people all the time. And, we had bought one or two houses, and I'm asking everyone around me, like, well, what have you done since last time? And they hadn't done anything. And so it was, what I think it is, it's one of these things is, you're just paying for really expensive information, that you could find somewhere else. I understand the concept behind it. They're trying to condense, shrink time frames. But reality is, if you just go to your local real estate investors association and offer to volunteer for someone that's doing something that's in what you want to do, you'll learn way more that way than you would spending any type of money doing that stuff.
Great. So you were doing Trump University. You were going to the REIs, trying to learn whatever you could. Where did you go from there?
So we were living in California, and we were trying to make flipping houses work out there. Well, it turns out, we had, I'm not sure how familiar you are with that market, but back at the bottom, you had a ton of, it was like Orange County, so you already had a ton of cash sitting around that market in California. And then we had a ton of Asian money coming into the market where they were just bidding up houses and putting a lock on them and then shutting the doors and just waiting till the market appreciated to sell them off. So you had a ton of overseas cash coming over, and we had no idea what we were doing. We were making hard money cash offers and low ball offers. We didn't have a clue, long story short. And then we thought, well, we're getting bid out of California. Why don't we go to Vegas? And so went to Vegas, ended up picking up a property for $40,000 that had previously sold for $260,000 at the peak of the market, and didn't know what we were doing, paid a contractor about 2.5 times what it actually cost. But he was one of these guys that we met at Trump, and was kind of a little bit of a vulture. We didn't know it at the time. We just thought he was a nice guy. And so we ended up paying about 2.5 times what a rehab would cost. Rented it out, ended up making some money on it when it was all said and done, because Vegas appreciated considerably. Because we bought basically at the absolute bottom, which I call the lucky zone. And then the absolute top is the unlucky zone. But we bought at the lucky zone, which was like the bottom of the market. So we bought that one, and we held that one for like 1.5 years and ended up making a little bit of money on it, maybe 2 years. And then we couldn't find anything we wanted in Vegas. And then we ended up, another one of these vulture groups, getting involved in that and bought something in Phoenix and sold that one right before Phoenix has gone crazy. That market's gone nuts over the last little bit of time. Sold it right at the top or right before it started to accelerate to the top. Made a little bit of money at that, but we were, if you remember back in I think it was 2009 or 10, do you remember when they passed that law basically that you can racially profile in Phoenix? I sort of
remember the controversy around that.
Yeah, with the Sheriff Joe and all this stuff, basically if your skin was of a certain color, they could pull you over and ask for your papers, long story short. And so when they passed that, the entire Hispanic population disappeared right as we were finishing our rehab. and the city of Phoenix basically shut down.
Oh my God!
You literally had all the Hispanics pick up and leave, whether they were legal or illegal. Either way, they didn't want to be harassed, and they left. And so overnight, the place became a ghost town for a period of time, and it completely shut down the real estate market. And so that was right as we finished our flip in Phoenix. And we were staring. We ended up getting one offer that we would have lost $50,000 on, and we decided, no, I'm not going to take a $50,000 loss. I want to. We rented it for a while and ended up selling it to the tenant and basically break even a couple years later. And so I took all that money. My wife was an engineer for General Electric, and we were part of her leadership program. So General Electric was moving us around the country every 6 months, and in California we were there for 3 years. And so they ended up bringing her back to Cincinnati because GE Aviation is based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And so at that point, I decided I'd been through this Vegas deal. We had burned a bunch of time in California trying to flip houses with hard money letters when we're competing against all cash. I mean, we literally made probably 100 offers, drove every realtor in California crazy. And then had this Phoenix thing. Moved to Cincinnati. We had lived there previously for 6 months when she interned there, and I decided to get my real estate license because I wanted to get involved with not so much. I want to get involved with like property management and potentially commercial real estate because I always thought that would be something that I was good at. It wasn't a ton of emotion. It was pretty much numbers and everything like that. And because I'm not great personally dealing with the emotional roller coaster of the retail real estate stuff. I can do it, but it's not something that I love doing. I have a hard time like objection handling someone. Not that I can do it, but I don't enjoy doing it. Objection handling the paint color or something ridiculous. So I thought commercial real estate was going to be my spot. In Cincinnati, we ended up taking a 4-unit building that we bought for virtually nothing. I didn't know how bad the area was when I bought there until I tried to order pizza because I moved into the building also, making sure it didn't get broken into. After rehabbing a 4-unit building, put $40,000 into it. Ended up at its peak, it was getting $2,300 a month in rent. But I was only into it for $70, so the cash flow was pretty solid. But even Domino's wouldn't deliver pizza on the street. 3 people got shot while I was living there on the street. We were the only Caucasians living on the street. It was a rough neighborhood to say the least. When you know pizza, this is a little tip if you're investing in property. Call the local pizza places, and if they won't deliver into the neighborhood, you might use that as a barometer as to whether or not to invest there.
Yeah, you invested in a D neighborhood there.
Yeah, the 4-unit sister building next door to it caught on fire, and they ended up knocking it over. Yeah, that was an experience, that one. And luckily, I have my 2 big American bulldogs, so no one messed with us. We were just known as the crazy people on the street. Crazy. That was a wild place. And then I have apparently in the past I have very little tolerance for risk, I guess, in a sense of like I'm willing to risk everything and not even realize I'm doing it. I bought a 3-unit building in Cincinnati as well while we were living in the 4-unit, and bought a 3-unit and basically it was a 2-unit that we were going to move into a 3-unit, and ended up putting about $140,000 into that sucker and lost a ton of cash, lost like $40,000 to $50,000 on that. And I still hadn't had enough pain between all of that. I had never really flipped a multi-unit building, and then I went to take on a $100,000+ rehab on a 100-and-some-year-old house, and I think I've lost a couple years of my life doing that. And then moved to Michigan because during that whole ordeal, we were driving back to Michigan all the time, where we grew up, and we just decided, you know what? We're just going to move home. And General Electric offered my wife a role in which she could work remotely all the way up into the day in which she was going to sign the papers to take that new role, and said, hang on, no, actually we need you to work in Dayton. And that was the last time she worked for GE. She quit and went to work for Quicken Loans as a mortgage banker. And we thought, okay, we've got our loan officers, my wife, I'm going to go retail real estate, and we're going to, be a team and run this thing. And she ended up being wildly successful doing that. She ended up, even though she's got an engineer mind and she's an introvert, she's able to talk educated to clients and be able to come from a place of contribution with clients. And she actually was the number one, being an introvert, the number one lead to close person in the entire company. I have her big award actually sitting behind me. It's a giant wolf howling into the moon. And she was the top lead to close person there. And I ended up getting my license in the state of Michigan, or I was licensed in Ohio, got my license in Michigan, and still hadn't had enough pain flipping houses. Decided that I was now going to take another 100-year-old house on in a community locally that is, I'll give it a solid C. I'm not going to give its name, but a solid C neighborhood. And between my mom and I, we were in for $124,000 on this house. Sold it for $128,000, which was a record sale in the neighborhood, which was always stupid to do. A record sale in the neighborhood, and doing all that, I was in 2013 part-time as a realtor and made $13,000 just working with friends and family. So I was going through a year-long flip of this property where I had $120-some thousand of my mom and I's tied up. And then, meantime, I was a realtor barely doing anything. I made $13,000, and I've been through the 4-unit pain of flipping that building, the pain of Arizona and everyone, disappearing out there, Vegas, where we told our property manager, don't install the washer and dryer and water heater after someone stole it. Wait till we have a tenant in place. She still installed it anyways, and then it got stolen again. Talk about stupid. So all this pain of investing and everything everywhere. And then we're at this $124,000 place, and it was just so much stress. And I just said, you know what, I'm just going to do this realtor thing full time. And then as I'm in the market, I'm going to understand the market. And as opportunities present themselves, I'm going to seize them. So the realtor gig is going to be, if you've read Cash Flow Quadrant, I'm going to be in the S quadrant. And then as I see opportunities, I'm going to take the money I make in the S quadrant and I'm going to put it into the B quadrant with buying property. So today we've got 3 properties, 2 of which are paid all cash. They're worth about $140 each. We have very good tenants in them. One's an OBGYN, married to a nurse. Another one, she's hourly, but her last place she lived in was for 7 years. The landlord just decided he's going to sell it at this point, and she moved in with us. She actually is the aunt of one of the people that work for us. I should say work with us. People work with us, not for us. And then we've got another one in the Royal Oak community, which I bought for $135. It does have we owe about $90 on it, but it's worth about $170 now, and that's within 3 years. We got $40,000 appreciation. And then we've got our house. So as we've gone along in the real estate market, we've just seen like, okay, this is a deal, and we pulled the trigger on it because we're in the market. We don't even have to pull comps. I already know what stuff goes for the area. Just being in the game every day. You don't speed to the deal is critical. We had one with the hourly person in there. That one we was listed and had appraised for $100,000. We offered $82 cash within an hour of it coming back on the market, and they took it because they had 6 people involved in that estate. And by the time they got figuring out how much money less it would be per person, it was only a couple grand, and they said, screw it, like let's just get rid of this problem on a house they had inherited. So still found money for them. And when you have the ability in which to execute with all cash in a quick amount of time, and you don't have to go and do all these spreadsheets and all this other stuff because you already understand what you're doing, you can pull the trigger on something pretty quickly. So 2013 was part-time. That's when I was trying to flip that house and for all that money, and then made the $13,000. I said after that, 2014, I just said, screw it. I'm just going to be a realtor. And we did 50 units in my first year. The average agent does 9. We did 50 units in my first year because I just hustled my butt off. If I'm good at anything, it's building relationships. And I have no fear of chasing big accounts. So I ended up picking up a Quicken Loans account in 2014, which is super difficult to do.
What does that mean, a Quicken Loans account?
Yeah, so Quicken Loans is the number 1 online lender in the world. They're based out of downtown Detroit, and they're actually the number 2 lender overall of the entire mortgage market. They have about 9% market share. And locally, they have 20,000 people that work for their family and companies. Okay, so needless to say, if you're able to get their every day they're talking to thousands and thousands of people who are looking to buy or sell. And if they're not attached to a realtor, they have their own internal referral brokerage in which the loan officer will send it to the referral brokerage, and the referral brokerage will send it out to pre-screened realtors. Okay, and then you pay your lump sum back to them, 35%, but they're bringing you pre-approved buyers looking to pull the trigger now, right? Versus your Zillows and your Trulias and all these other lead sources that take a lot of nurturing. And so, like the month of January, the average from the time they hired us, a client, to the time they went under contract, the average was 14 days. There's no other lead source in the game that is that fast. So you don't make as much money per deal, but you end up closing a lot more people. And so locally, that's a very sought after account because once they get you on board, then they have an endless amount of business, essentially, more than anyone could personally handle themselves. And so my wife was working there. She was successful. I was sending her business, and I just kept showing up whenever her team had a get-together at the bar or at dinner or anything. I showed up. And I got to know those guys and gals, and next thing you know, if they don't have someone in the business that they're friends and family with, then I was the only other person they knew that was a realtor, and they knew me, they liked me, they trusted me, which are the three most important things in real estate, and I think is the three most important things in any business thing, because I won't go on a long tangent on that, but long story short, if you know someone, like them, and you trust them, then you're willing to do a lot of things without having to do your due diligence because you already know them, you like them, and most importantly, you trust them. And so they knew me, they liked me, they trust me, and I started working with them to help them buy their properties. Next thing you know, I started talking with her boss, and he said, hey, look at what a great job Joe's done to his boss. And then his boss got me to an even higher level within their referral brokerage, and ended up doing 50 deals that first year with people. And that's unheard of. I don't know of anyone who's done 50 units in their first year by themselves. It got to the point in which things were so crazy that my wife left her job, which she was going to make about $200,000 at Quicken that year, to come be my director of operations, essentially. And that's her background. She has a huge operations background. She's ran massive projects for General Electric.
So let's. I want to talk about your wife because she has an interesting background as well.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to slow it down and just kind of take a look at the transition you went through there, from being an investor, rehabbing, doing some flipping, managing rental property. You had some success, but you also had a lot of failure too during that period.
I'd argue failure is if you quit. We had, if we failed forward because we learned a lesson every single time.
Yeah, and I don't mean failure in the bad sense, but failure in the sense that you learn from it, and obviously you took some of those lessons to starting your own, to becoming a real estate agent, and then starting your own group. What were some of the lessons you took from those failures or lessons or whatever you want to call them?
Yeah, a ton of them. So I think relationships are king. Anything in life, I think, is based off relationships. I realized that the people, through all the learning of that, relationships are everything. And I think that helps us a lot in business today. And those relationships, like I know you and I got connected through Josh Sterling, that's a really important relationship to me. Not only are we friends, but that's the type of guy that I know, I like, I trust, and I'd be willing to give him $100,000 if he said something was a deal because he's the man. He's Josh Sterling. I don't need to know the details. I know he knows the details, right? And so I think that's probably one of the most lasting lessons that I learned through all that is relationships are king. The second part is maybe there should be someone that you bounce something you're about to attempt off of that has a little more experience than you do as a sounding board, because when you have a very high tolerance for risk, or whatever the term is, when you're willing to take on very risky things, and that's the way you're naturally wired, maybe have the critical, have a devil's advocate there to poke a hole in your plan potentially, because I'm willing to take on the world, probably too much so, which got us into a lot of those situations. That I think your local real estate investors association is nothing but gold. If you have a good one locally, you've got a lot of people there that have years and years of experience. Don't be afraid to volunteer your time for free to learn from them. Sometimes you have to work to learn before you can work to earn. And I should have done a lot more working to learn before working to earn on some of those projects. So
you became a Keller Williams real estate agent, and it really seems like the pivotal thing that just propelled you into the stratosphere was your relationship with Quicken Loans. Just and the volume of sales that they were able to bring you.
Yeah, that was a piece of it. There's a little more backstory to that. So I was with one of the Berkshire companies, which is one of Warren Buffett's companies today, and I was coming off my year. I was with their company when we did 50 units, and I was telling these guys if Southeast Michigan has some of the top business agents in the world, and they're pushing more units than just about anywhere else. I mean, there's still some people that are a little bit higher, but like the number one realtor in the state's number 3 overall, right? So we have people that are pushing a lot of houses, and I saw these guys doing it, and I was at a brokerage in which they didn't have a clue on how to get there. Great people, good people, friends people I call friends today, but they didn't understand the business agent concept, the team concept. They were really, really good with the solo agent, and but I knew at that point that there's only so many hours in the day, and there's only so many only so many clients I can take on. At some point, I need help, and they didn't have an idea on how to get there. And I had read Millionaire Real Estate Agent, a book by Gary Keller, which is over 1 million copies sold. I think it's like 1.5 million copies sold. It's the Bible of Keller Williams, long story short. And I became a guest to Family Reunion with Keller Williams, and I saw these guys on stage, and I thought they had typos because that's how much business they were selling. I'm like, did that guy really sell $130 million in business, or did they add an extra zero there for some reason? And some of the stuff they're talking about, I didn't have a clue about. And just knowing all the previous pain from the past of attempting things without having what I was telling you, someone with a proven track record to bounce stuff off of, I knew that I'm not great at recreating the wheel. I'm not great at attempting the wheel myself. I might as well be as close to people that are already doing it as possible. If you can give me the path, I'll run down it super fast, but I'm not real great at blazing the path, if that makes sense. I joined KW and went from that 50 units to 194 units to 368 units, and they just have the team concept figured out. And yeah, a big piece of it was the Quicken account, but we picked up other big accounts. Like I think we're probably the business solution for retail sales in the area. We have one of the top. I mean, these guys are going to do. Their goal is $3 million in assignment fees this year. Locally, and Josh and a guy named Mike and myself have become really good friends, and they're going to do $3 million in wholesale assignment fees this year. That's their goal, and I've built a great relationship with him. And anything that's not something that someone will accept their blood-sucking low cash offer, they turn around and they'll send it to us, and we'll pay them a referral fee on it. We have attorneys that send us business. We just have a really good system so other businesses can appreciate what we do because we run so clean. And most people's experiences with a realtor, I would say they typically don't walk away thinking, oh, that was so smooth. Whereas us, they do. So other businesses appreciate that. So it's basically chasing really big accounts, and then they yield a lot of closings as a result.
Well, let's talk about that, because you talk about the individual real estate agent, and then you refer to yourself as a business agent. What is the difference in mindsets? Well, first of all, what do you mean by business agent? And then what is the difference in mindset between a business agent and an individual realtor?
Yeah, so a business agent within Keller Williams, Keller Williams would call it a mega agent, but I think a business agent would make more sense to the general public, is someone who has people that work with them on a consistent basis. So our team, our organization is 23 people today, and that's within the Keller Williams brokerage. We have our own mini brokerage within the brokerage, if that makes sense. It's people that are specializing their process, right? So we have people that do transaction coordinating. We have people that make phone calls. We have virtual assistants that write offers for us. We have buyer's agents. We have agents that do buying and selling. And so we have a conglomerate together, all pulling the cart in the same direction, right? And that's what a business agent does. It's the person in charge of that whole deal, okay? Whereas a solo agent, I think we all have a pretty good grasp of what the average realtor does on a daily basis, right? They wear a million different hats. They do all their own marketing. They show all their own houses. They write all their own offers. They do all their transaction coordinating. They have to build all their own relationships. It's them. They do everything, which is if you look at business, there's very few businesses in the world that do that. So if you're able to go from the S quadrant, which is, self-employed, and that's what a solo realtor does, is they're self-employed. They created their own job, right? And go and move to the B quadrant, to where now you have a collection of individuals that are all pulling the cart in the same direction. That's what a mega agent team or a business agent, that's what they do. They're working on putting together their own systems, their own processes, and they have a collection of people pulling the cart in that same direction.
So you went to work for Keller Williams because you liked their program. I'd imagine they probably had excellent training, and you felt as though you could plug into what Keller Williams had to offer in order to create the type of business that you imagine would work best?
Yeah, so Keller Williams, Keller Williams is, through the last 4 years, has been rated the number one training and consulting company in the world, all industries. Okay, so that's your GEs, your Quicken Loans, your, you name it, your Coca-Colas, all these big conglomerates. KW is rated number one, okay, in training and consulting. And the 1 year they weren't number one, they were number two, all right, and that's by Training Magazine. And so there's a plethora of unlimited amount. You could never even attempt to take on all the training they have. And last year I spent $45,000 traveling around the country to the top trainings to immerse myself within it. And Keller Williams is just an incredible solution for those who are looking to build a team, or if you're solo, because they tailor towards solo stuff. But especially if you're looking to build a team, they're incredible. If you're looking to build a business, they're the best spot to do it, because they believe that buyers and sellers or other businesses look to you to work with you because of who you are, not because of who the brokerage is. And you have a contrasting viewpoint, whereas does Remax have any market share where you're at?
Oh, yeah, there's Remax out here in West Michigan.
And what are they known for? When you think of Remax, what do you think of? To be honest, I kind of don't even look at the company. I look at the person and the personal relationship I would have with them, whether they're a Remax agent or Keller Williams or Greenridge or whatever the real estate agency might be. And if your agent was the transfer brokerages, would you stay with the brokerage you were currently working with in the past, or would you have gone with that agent wherever they went?
I would go with the agent.
Right, and that's the philosophy Keller Williams has. They really don't believe that the reason Brian chooses his realtor is because they're with Keller Williams. He believes Brian chooses his realtor because he likes that realtor. And a contrasting theme with Remax is they believe that you choose them because of the brand, right? That's why you see Remax on the side of a bus. You see the balloon on the, that's why they take a bunch of money from their agents and spend it on branding for Remax, because they believe that Remax will generate their agents more money. Keller Williams doesn't do that. They spend $0 on advertising every year. They're the largest real estate company in the world, and they believe in cutting their fees down. They'd rather be cheaper and allow you to spend your money instead of giving the money to KW, and they know what's best for you. And so they allow you to create your own brand within Keller Williams and give you all the training and tools in which to do it. Whereas a different, an old school brokerage in Remax or Century 21 or even Berkshire would, they want you to brand the brokerage. And they believe that the brokerage will gain more deals for you, because if it's the brokerage name all over the place, they believe you're going to call that broker instead of being associated with that agent. And I happen to be of the thought that I think people work with us because of our mission, our values, our beliefs, not the missions and values and beliefs of Keller Williams. And so that's why I like being here.
Well, let's talk about your brand, because you started the Delia Group, which is a Keller Williams brokerage agency. Tell me about that. How did you? What was it that led you to actually start your own group as opposed to just join someone else's group and be part of their business?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. So I probably would have joined a team if I had any clue what that even meant. When you're on a team, you get usually have access to leads, you have access to even higher level, like more intricate training on a daily basis. You're working around people that are all pulling the cart in the same direction. But by the time I even figured out what that meant, I was already crushing it from an individual perspective. And I had gotten to the point where, I mean, if you get to 50 units, Brian, you have a choice. Either you just start top grading the clients you're working with, right? So instead of, I'm not going to drive that far away, I'm just going to refer that out, and I'm going to either get closer to my house, or I'm going to go and I'm going to top grade towards higher price points so I can make more per deal and refer the rest of the deals out. Or you have to say, okay, I don't want to refer clients out. I still want to keep all of my own clients, but I have to hire someone now. And that's very difficult because you get into sales to be a salesperson, and then you find yourself so successful in sales that then you have to hire someone, right? And so, do you have an administrator at all?
The closest I have to that is a bookkeeper that I hire,
okay.
and then I have a third-party property management company that does all that work for me.
So you bring leverage in your life, and an agent has to do that same thing. And they're not necessarily great at being a boss. They just happen to be very successful in sales. And so you have a choice. Like when you plug into a team, all that stuff's already provided for you. All you have to do is stay within sales. If you, as an individual agent, you have a choice at some point. Either you're just going to do the same amount of deals, but they're going to be closer to your house so you're more efficient, or higher price point so you make more per deal, or you're going to do all of those deals, but you're going to leverage and have to hire an assistant to come on and take a lot of that paperwork off for you. I went the route of bringing my wife on board. I always knew she was always going to be our first hire, and we always planned on building a business together. And she's lights out when it comes to operations. So she's the reason we have the success we have today, because she's been able to put all these systems and processes in place, and then I'm able to do what I do, which is the Tasmanian devil, create a bunch of chaos, and she cleans it up, and it spits out a lot of closings. So,
well, this is the part that I'm really interested in, because now that we're up to your wife joining your business, and the two of you teaming up to create the Delia group. Your wife has an interesting background. Can you talk about her black belt and
Sure.
what that means and what that brought to your group?
Yeah. So my wife's background is she graduated with an industrial operations engineering degree out of the University of Michigan. She graduated. She self-admittedly, she's not the world's. She's not some genius. She's smart, but she's not a genius. And you get into the world of, the top engineering school in the world, like General Electric for industrial operations engineering. She's surrounded with some geniuses. She had to really put in the work to get to the point in which she was going to be competing with these guys in classes for grades and everything else. And in the meantime, she interned for General Electric in their program while she was in college. And coming out of there, she did such a great job, they offered her a full-time role with their, they call it OMLP, which is Operations Management Leadership Program. And these guys that are in that program are coming out of college. They're basically the elite of the elite. And all of them that I keep in touch with today are doing very big things. And so she was in that program, and every 6 months we rotated for 2 years. So we lived in Cincinnati, we moved to Boston, we moved to South Texas, then we moved to California, and that was the end of the 2 years, so 6 months each chunk there. And the plant she was with decided to bring her on full-time, she was already full-time, but to bring her on permanently there for a role. And we ended up staying out there for 3 years. And her specialty is operations. So she's a lean genius. She is incredible at operations and lean processes, which was Six Sigma was actually created by Jack Welch when he took over at General Electric.
Yeah,
and
Six Sigma, right? Six Sigma?
Six Sigma, you got it. Yeah, so she was actually the serving master black belt. Yeah, serving master black belt when she left General Electric. Which is the highest designation you can get within lean processing. So that ability in which she had a project, just to brag about her a little bit. She took over a project. She started just tracking one part on this project when she was in California. And by the time she got done, she was running the whole project within 3 months. They had moved on the guy who was doing it and brought her in to take it on, and they were 6 months behind with 8 months left in the end of this project, and it was a subcontract for the landing gear. Most of the gear on planes when you land are General Electric landing gear, and most of the planes you fly are General Electric engines. And Northrop Grumman, are you familiar with Northrop Grumman?
Yeah, I used to live in Los Angeles, so.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so they've got a massive presence out in Los Angeles. So Northrop Grumman subcontracted General Electric to build out the landing gear for the X-47B. Okay, it looks like one of these B-1 bombers. It's a drone, and it was the first unmanned aircraft with no pilot. So it's not like a Predator where you got some guy in Vegas driving this thing around. There's no pilot, and it was the first one to land and launch off an aircraft carrier. Okay, and so there's no one driving this thing, and you just punch in whatever you got to punch into the computer, and this thing will launch off an aircraft carrier, go bomb something, or take pictures of it, and come back and land. I mean, it's crazy. It's bananas. And so they subcontracted her on that, and she brought that project and hit the deadline all the way back. And she did it with over 200 people that were on the project, none of which were her direct reports. So she had to do it all through influence and persuasion because she couldn't control their promotions or anything else. And it was really incredible to see what she did with that. And she was the only person from General Electric invited to watch the launch of that X-47B. She was sitting in the VIP section with all the 4-star generals to see this thing go off. And Northrop picked her up in a limo and drove her from Orange County up to Edwards Air Force Base in a limo because they were just so ecstatic because they thought they were screwed. The GE was so far behind on the project, and she brought it all the way back. So she's really impressive. Her operations background is, she was still at GE when she left. The vice president of systems named Renes called her and said, "Why are you leaving? We have you slotted for my job one day." And so she's incredibly talented.
Wow, so that's really powerful. I'd love to know when your wife. What is your wife's name, by the way? Renes. So I'd love to know when Renes joined your group, the Delia group, how she translated that Six Sigma 6 black belt knowledge and I think you called it the persuasion and leveraging personal relationships to get things done. How does that translate to the Delia group?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a lot of things in the way in which we approach everything is something scalable. Okay, so is what we're doing today scalable, whether we're doing it once or we're doing it 1,000 times with the same process work, right? So that's an efficiency. Why keep recreating your same process over and over and over again if you can just do it once? So she has the ability to foresee that and only put in place stuff that can be done 1,000 times versus just once, right? And so the other piece of it is she has the knack of continuing to identify stuff that can be pushed down the organizational chart to someone who does things for less dollars an hour, like a virtual assistant, for instance. And then that way our people we keep local are doing things that require strong analytical skills, problem solving, thinking. We're paying people here to do thinking things, not repetition things. Whereas you can put a lot of the repetition things on virtual assistants overseas, so they just keep churning them. Put a widget in, it looks the same at the end. Put a widget in, looks the same at the end. So she does an incredible job of continuing to create processes to make sure that the lowest dollar per hour things that are done in a real estate transaction are done by the lowest dollar per hour people. I'd love
to hear a specific example of when she came on board, something she did that really kind of revolutionized what you were doing.
Okay, so there's a few things we do that very few people nationally do. I don't know of anyone doing one of these things, and I know of very few doing another. Okay, and that's if you're Brian, if you're an agent on our team, and you have a client that wants to offer, let's just say you're a multifamily building, right? You're a commercial broker, and you want to offer on this building, and I don't know what those look like, but let's just say you have a contract that needs to put in place. Our virtual assistants can put together a contract within 15 minutes. And so you could still be sitting there in the driveway of the house or building in which you're interested in purchasing, and you could have that purchase agreement back in your client's email within 15 minutes for them to sign it there right on the spot, which in a fast-paced market is critical, speed to a deal. And so our agents are able to just send in a quick template of what they want done. Our virtuals do it, send it to the client to sign. then the virtuals get it back after the client sign and send it out to a listing agent with a template and a format as to who to contact in the offer and asking for confirmation. So that's something that very few people are doing. Most people have either their agents writing the offers, which we try to take as much paperwork off of our agents and put them on our administration team so our agents can do nothing but sell all day, because that's where they make their money. And then it also gives our clients a better experience, because now they're having stuff get done faster. Because when I was solo, if I was showing houses all day, I didn't get to my laptop until the evening. By that point, I was mentally and physically spent, so I was making all kinds of mistakes and everything else. So that's a value proposition both to people in our organization and our clients. Okay. Here's another one. We have Google Forms. Okay. So again, you're a client of ours and you're interested in seeing these 3 houses. You fill out this, quick questionnaire as to when you're available, what are the properties you're interested in seeing, and I don't know what the other questions are because I don't do it, but there's a series of questions on there, and that Google form will go to our virtual assistants, who will then screen every one of those properties, reach out to the listing agent, and figure out whether or not those properties are actually still available. If they are available, do they have any offers on them? Because that's probably some important information before you see the house. A, is it available? B, does it have offers, right? Because do you think the solo agent has time to go and screen all those properties? The answer is no, right? And so our virtual assistants will go and screen those properties. So then our agents are only showing homes that are available to our client. And then our client's having a better experience because they're never seeing a house that just hasn't been updated on the MLS yet, and they fall in love. Turns out they can't even buy. So it just makes our clients, our agents' time more efficient, and it makes our clients have a better experience because they're not getting heartbroken over and over.
So it really seems like Renes has helped in many ways, but one of the key ways is using virtual assistants to automate things and just speed things along as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the unique things that we do that very few other people do. And when you're only spending $4 an hour, it keeps your expenses low, so then you can use that money for something else.
Yeah, fantastic. And I was talking to Mike Cowper. He's on a separate episode of this podcast, and he said you have an interesting take on finding and hiring talent. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So in KW, we have something called career visioning, and that's a process in which that it's a whole hiring process. So for me, one of the things we do is like we're interviewing for a director of operations. Just to give you real life examples today. All right, so we're interviewing for a director of operations role, someone to backfill my wife so I can turn her loose on something else. All right, and some of these people. Brian, would you consider yourself more of an introvert or extrovert?
Somewhere in between.
So most people either affiliate either direction, and some people, most people aren't very self-aware because they don't spend a ton of time on that. So I know Mike's implemented the DISC test, and that's something that's available to everyone. But you want to make sure that you're putting the right people on the bus, so on the right spots on the bus. And so when we have people that come in, we first ask them to come shadow our organization. That's the first thing we ask. So anyone who puts in any type of application, any type of role in our organization, we'll get them on the line, do a quick screening interview with them to make sure that they don't say anything too crazy and just kind of skim. 80% of the people we talk to, we invite them to come in. At that point, only about 50% of them show up, and only 50%, and some of them show up late, so they're automatically screened out. Okay, and so the people who show up late and the people who don't show up, they're done. From there, they shadow our organization, and I think this is critical. And I don't care what business you're in. I have this step. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. They come and they see how we work. They come and see what we do on a daily basis. They see that people around here, we don't show up and start cruising Facebook. People get on the phones. We make a lot of cold calls. We really hammer the phones pretty hard, and we're very learning based, and we run a pretty aggressive organization. And that's not for everyone, and that's okay. They could be great in some type of organization. It's got to be the right fit for us and the right fit for them. And so a good chunk of people at that point decide, you know what, this is a little more intense than what I'd like to be a part of, which is fine, no problem. And then at that point, so far, I've spent zero time today worrying or screening out these candidates, right? They've come and they some of them don't show up. Some of them do show up and they show up late. Some of them on the phone, I have a gal that does a quick 10-minute screening interview with them. She'll weed some of them out. So now we're down to people that show up on time and are interested in what we do. At that point, we send a behavioral assessment. Okay, and in Keller Williams, we have our own. It's a Keller personality assessment. But you can use the DISC or an AVA or Myers-Briggs or whatever. There's tons of them out there, whatever you want to do. But you want to make sure that what the role you're looking for is who this person is. So real-life examples are director of operations. We end up getting candidates that were off-the-charts sociable applying for a director of operations role. Now, I can't speak for other companies, but for us, I don't need Chatty Cathy managing all of our operations side of the business. I need more of an engineering mind, someone like my wife. That's what we need in that role. So that doesn't fit for us. And if you're truly career visioning and you have opportunities all over the place in your organization and you've already built out your organizational chart and you're looking to fill different things, then at that point you can present people, say, hey, look, I appreciate you sitting down with me, and I've done this multiple times this week. I appreciate you sitting down with me. Based on us going through this assessment together, what you're great at doesn't necessarily fit what we're looking for in this role. However, we are looking for something where I'll pivot them to an agent if they're highly sociable. However, we are hiring, and we do want people to join our organization as salespeople. You and I both just went through this and said how you're a people person, and I think you'd be amazing as a realtor in our organization. However, our director of ops role doesn't fit your unique talents. Okay, and so if you're truly career visioning people and you truly have an organizational chart and what you're looking to build out, then you're able to put people on the right spot on the bus. Okay, so our process is the screening, the shadowing. At that point, they get the KPA. You validate the KPA with them. If you send someone a behavioral assessment, your duty at that point, if you're going to do that, is you must validate that with them, because you know what it feels like. You tell someone, hey, I just want you to take this, and then it doesn't come back what you're looking for, and then it makes people feel like they failed. Somehow their personality has failed what you're trying to do. So if you're going to take the time out and ask someone to invest the time into a DISC, you need to validate that with them as far as I'm concerned, and as far as Keller Williams is concerned. So you validate that with that. If they are interested and it is a fit at that point, I ask 30 questions to get to know them even better. And some of those questions are, who do you like, admire, and respect? Who are the 3 people? I think that question I'm going to put at that point, you've really gotten to know someone. You're about an hour and a half into talking to them. And I get tears in my office all the time talking about who people like, admire, and respect. People get vulnerable at that point. What did you do to prepare for this interview? What do you know about us? Someone who says, well, I don't know crap about you, and I just kind of showed up. Well, that's probably not someone you're looking for. Who's trained you well? When have you had a poor experience with training? Who's managed you well? Who's managed you poorly? If we don't get together, I love this question. If we don't get together on this job, what would you do next? Right? And if someone's like, I don't know, I guess I'd just stay where I'm at. Well, that's not something I'm interested in. I'm interested in someone who's going to kick the door open if it's closed, not someone who's just going to, present that as. I need people to push through objections. Not. I want someone to say, well, I'll find someone else to go work with. Like, that's perfect. That's the type of person I want. So you ask 30 questions. At that point, if you're comfortable, we have another step. So they've come in, they've shadowed, we've screened them, they take this behavioral assessment, they come in again, you validate the KPA with them, you ask them 30 questions, and then we break for about 48 hours. And we ask them to come back in, and I dive into the life story, because most resumes are crap. Okay, so you dive into the life story, and I take people from the year they graduated high school, what sports did they play in high school, and we walk year by year, job by job, from high school all the way through today. And I'm asking a series of questions. What were your highlights? Did you do sports, Brian?
Badly.
Okay, so I would ask you, hey, Brian, you did badminton. You did badminton in high school. What was a highlight for you? What was a regret of yours? So I can tell you a lot of my regrets was immaturity and not giving a full effort. Okay, and so that was a lot of my regrets. And a lot of my highlights were I would take on the best people in the world, and I would be able to compete for a short amount of time, and then I would get tired because I was immature and didn't have the win that I was supposed to. And so you can find a track record. Are they on the right track record of success? Is this the next logical career move in their progression? Okay. Is the role you're looking for the next logical step in the process for them as they evolve as a professional. And so you walk them all the way through, and you really get to know them at that point. And then I'm also asking, as we're going along that, and how much did you make there? Okay, and was that hourly or was that salary? Okay, and I'm kind of mapping what their projection for income is, especially if I'm looking to hire some type of executive role. I want to know whether or not they're, if someone's looking to make $200,000 salary as a director of operations for us, we're not the right fit. If someone's looking for a low base, high upside where they get an override on profit and they're interested in betting their income on our profit, I'm very interested in that. That's the type of person I want to be a part of, or to have basically a partner in this business, because they're getting an override on profit. So you're able to walk them down exactly what their career path looks like. Is it the next logical choice for them? All right. And at that point, if everything's still going well, I want to dive into motivations. What do you want to do in the next 1, 3, and 5 years in your job? What type of money do you want to make in the next 1, 3, and 5 years? As a part of this organization? What would that money do for you? What could you do with that money? What type of impact would that have on you? Again, some people start crying at that point. And then what are the two other things that really motivate you? And so a lot of people, for me, it's family. So in the next year, whatever you want to do with your family, maybe that's a vacation, maybe that's I want to be able to take Sundays off, maybe that's a date night a week with your wife. Whatever it is, what are the goals that we want to set in the next 1, 3, and 5 years for your family? And then whatever your fourth one would be. For me, it's education. So certain things I want to be able to accomplish and take and master in the next 1, 3, and 5 years. And so we map all that out. And I want to make sure certain motivations that trigger people are the same motivations that I can mentally align with, because I believe everyone in your organization you need to like and they need to produce. And if either one of those things is a friction point, then it's not the best fit for both of you. Someone first has to produce, and if they're not producing but you love them, that's going to create friction with everyone else around you. That's where I struggle. If I like you, I hang on to you a little too long. Whereas if you're a super high producer but no one likes you, that's going to create friction as well. And they may be producing, but that doesn't mean it's a great fit for you. And so I want to make sure our motivations, our missions, visions, and values and beliefs align with the people that are going to join us. And we're not done at that point. At that point, then, if I've gone through that and your life story, this is the next projecting move for you. If your motivations align with what our motivations align with, and the other part of that emotion or that motivations is, if you're down in the dumps, I want to be able to have a trigger, to kind of leverage and a hot button to push with you. Brian, you said you wanted to be able to take your family on vacation, and you've been coming up shy of all of your income goals and everything right now. Are you going to be able to do that for them? And what's it going to be like when you go home and tell them, sorry, honey, we can't go to Disney this year? What's it going to be like with your kids? I want to know what is a motivation to you. And maybe someone just said that for the heck of it, but if they truly do believe that, it should be a spark to bring them back into action. And then you go out to lunch with our team. Not everyone, but we rotate it, and it's their opportunity in which to validate that person to make sure they're a cultural fit for our organization. And not that they have veto power, but they have damn near veto power on someone, because again, you may like them and they may produce, but if other people in the organization don't like them, there's going to be a friction point there. And we want everyone pulling the cart in the same direction. When you're in alignment, you can go quickly, you can go very fast. And so they go out to lunch with people on our team, and they come back. And sometimes if I have certain concerns, I'll ask the team to really dig deep on those things to see if they can dig deep on it. Like one guy I had the best answers for everything. I mean, this guy, it didn't matter what I asked him. He had like the cleanest. If he was like reading my mind, that was the answers he was giving. But I felt like it was too polished. Have you ever been around someone where you're like, that dude's way too polished, it's almost fake? You know what I'm saying? So this guy, I asked one of the guys on our team who's really good at asking great questions. I said, this guy just seems almost too perfect. I want you to kind of drill into him, because this guy that seemed too polished said, I really like to live kind of the Maxwell lifestyle, talking about John Maxwell, with all his leadership books. And the guy on our team's like, really, what's your favorite book? From John. And then it was just stammering and just like kind of threw out some bullshit answer. And at that point, that was a red flag, because the guy knew the surface level statements to make, but didn't necessarily actually do those type of things. Like I could name 5 John Maxwell books right now. You know what I mean? And if John Maxwell is one of your biggest leadership people you're following, you should be able to at least name one book that you've read of his. You know what I mean? And so the team has an opportunity in which to, kind of validate. And the second thing it does is it gives your team now, and your organization now has buy-in to this person that's joining the organization. So they've essentially given them their approval of this person, and at that point, they're bought into helping that person succeed. Whereas if it was just you who had it the entire time and inserted them in there, it doesn't have that same team feeling of bringing someone on. And then and only then after that do we go through the expectations of the job, the standards associated with it, and compensation. And that's kind of our that's a long answer to your question, but
that's definitely a very intense and exhaustive process you go through. But I'd imagine it really sets your team members up for great success.
Yeah, and are you familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yes,
Gary V. Right,
but so don't ask me what books which book is my favorite.
One's Crush It. But Gary V is I think he's our millennial, and I'm on the beginning of the millennial, which kind of bothers me. But I guess they said from 1983 forward are millennials, which kind of frustrates me because I was born in '84. But he's basically the person that most millennials look up to. And he talked about, Brian, if it's you and myself, and then let's just say 3 other people, you name them, whoever, your bookkeeper, your property manager, and someone else, versus LeBron, Steph Curry, and Carmelo Anthony in basketball to a game of, and we're playing to 50, maybe you and I and your other people, we score maybe 3 points in basketball on them. Maybe 3 points, right? But we have 5 people. They only have 3, right? Mm-hmm. So we have 5 people. They have 3, yet they're going to crush us in the game of basketball, right? So why don't us as organizations, why do we settle for C-rate players, which you and me, I'm a D- in basketball, probably an E-. I can't speak for you. Why don't we bring on LeBrons and Steph Curry's? Why do we try to settle everything with bringing on more people instead of just bringing on better people? And so that whole process is set up so we end up with people that have high upsides. I'm not interested in bringing people into our organization that are that are C's, because C's will repel A's all day. I want A's. Let's roll with a group of A's, not a big group of C's. And that's from pure learning that pain. We're in business with 23 people today, including my wife and I, and we've gotten rid of 19 people in the same amount of time in 2 years. So we've made a lot of mistakes. And what I realized is that your C's repel A's. A's aren't interested in sitting next to C's. And you will be wildly more profitable and wildly more successful if you have a group of A's versus settling for C's. It's like the book Jim Collins, Good to Great, right? What's the enemy of great is good. And that is settling for people can kill an organization.
Great advice there. Let's bring it back around to the real estate investor, rental property owner. Cool. And you've just given us so much great insight into building a successful business, using systems and techniques to get an A team around you. How does this apply to the average real estate investor, rental property owner? How can they take some of what you've just said and apply it to their business?
I think in the world of contractors, where I was reflecting back, where I was very poor, was that I was not doing a great job of making sure I had great contractors. And I think in the contractor world, you get 3 traits, but you only get to pick 2 of them, and that's speed, quality, and price. So you can get the fast guy that's cheap, but his quality sucks, right? Or you can get the expensive guy, or you can get quality and speed, but they're going to be expensive. Right. Today, that's where I would rather be. And so if you're looking at your contractors or your electrician or your plumber, don't be afraid to top grade to a better person. That's where I made big mistakes. Second, I look at Mike. So you said you had Mike Cowper on the podcast. he and I are very much in alignment in which our organizations, and he's turned over a lot of people too. Learning the idea of building businesses. If you're a residential real estate investor, you've got to make a stand with your first hire. If you're getting to the point in which you have more business than you can handle and it's getting messy, and you're good at finding deals, but you're not good at keeping them clean or managing what happens after it. If you're a visionary and not the integrator, make a stand and find that integrator, your first person. Because that person, if you get the right person, will propel you, like my wife, for instance, will propel you to heights that you've never seen before because it frees you up to do what you're good at. And usually if you're doing what you're good at, you're happy. And if you're happy and you're doing what you're good at, usually you'll see some success. And so make a stand with that first hire and don't grow until you have the right person and in that role. And then don't bring on anyone else until you have that LeBron and running your operations team. And if you truly do that, you will see wild amount of success. But if you bring on a crap person, you're going to do nothing but burn yourself out. I listened to your podcast with Josh, and do you remember what he said about his his administrator? Right? He thought that was good until he got someone better. And once you have talent, then you realize, wow, that once you have a talented person in the role, you realize what's possible, whereas most people are used to just settling. And so the residential real estate investor, if you're a flipper, your property manager or your project manager needs to be lights out. And if they're not, find someone who is, and don't settle until you do, and then move on to the next role. Talking with Mike a lot, you said he finds whatever his bottlenecks are, and he fills them, and he keeps turning people over until he finds the right person in that role. And so that's my biggest advice to people is do not settle for people. There are better people. And in a down market, a lot of talent becomes available, and seize them, find them. And another thing is just because someone's not available today in which to hire doesn't mean they won't reach a point in their life in which they are frustrated, in which they are feeling unfulfilled in their current role. It took Gary Keller 12 years to recruit Diana Kokoska and Tony DeCello, who now run the coaching arm of Keller Williams. 12 years he stayed in conversation with these people until finally they got frustrated enough to leave where they were at and come join Gary. And so keep in conversation with talent. If you've got some A's and maybe you can't get them today, timing's not right, stay in conversation with them. So that's for the residential real estate investor. I would definitely stay in conversation with talent, follow best practices, immerse yourself in learning. You never know it all. Don't act like you do. Don't think that you do. Consistently learning best practices and immerse yourself with the top people in the area doing it. Even if you take an unpaid job in which to learn it, you'll work to learn, and then you can work to earn.
Great advice. Great advice. I want to talk a little, just briefly about your area, before we wrap it up here.
Sure.
You're in the Detroit area, the Tri-County metro area. And before the show, we were talking a little bit about this debate between buying less expensive properties in riskier neighborhoods and getting better cash flow versus buying higher price properties. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so me personally, I think it's a combination. If you're going to be the person who is going to physically will your way to creating cash on cash returns in a D neighborhood, then I guess go for it. If you want to be that person that's going to own a bunch of $1,000 houses and you're going to every day bang on the door looking for rent money, then I guess that's probably go for it if that's what you're into. Me personally, I believe that regardless of what it says on paper, by the time you get done with all the unexpected expenses of evictions and water heaters going missing and furnaces disappearing and random craziness that goes on in those neighborhoods, I believe if you can get into a B neighborhood and that has an upside for potential, you're able to acquire it below market value through cash and has an upside potential, and you're able to lease to professionals instead of leasing to people that borderline keep a job, that your life, you'll make more per hour invested into that, and you'll have a higher upside. And I just truly believe that if you are leasing to professionals and you lease and you buy properties in markets in which professionals are purchasing and renting, you'll have incredible amount of more return, regardless of what the paper says before you pick up the property, than if you go into your D neighborhoods and you're having to chase people for rent money all the time. So I can tell you the 3 properties I own today, I probably get a call every other month at most about something on the property. And that's because one of our tenants owns 4 other houses around the state. He's a consultant, and that got a long-term consulting job over here that came out of retirement because he was bored and got working part-time as a consultant making 6 figures. And that's in a property I bought for $135,000. Our other tenant is an OBGYN who's married to a nurse, and that's our tenant. They haven't called. Oh, they called me to remind me that we hadn't re-upped our lease. That was the last time they called me, and that was like 6 months ago. And then our other tenant just moved in, and she is hourly. Not that there's nothing wrong with hourly, but the last place she lived in was for 7 years, and she's paying $1,250 a month on a property we bought for $82,000. And you might be able to find something that's cheaper, and you might get the same amount of rents or close or have a better ratio. But I'll tell you what, man, we don't get that many calls. We don't have people, well, my tire popped, so I had to buy a new tire so that now I don't have rent money. Like, that doesn't exist in our areas, not if you're doing your screening properly. Whereas if you deal with the guy making, what's minimum wage now, $7, $8 an hour, someone making $7, $8 an hour, and they have their transmission go out on their car, well, they're probably going to fix their car before they pay you. And I've just found that I've seen it over and over, and I've experienced it personally, where you're trying to trade houses and trying to scratch out a buck in these low-end neighborhoods because your Excel spreadsheet says it's good. But in reality, by the time you get done, Excel lied to you, and now you're selling it at a fire sale price to Mike Cowper. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm in your camp. I would agree with everything you just said. Spend the extra money, get the better property, you get higher quality residents, and it makes your life a lot easier.
I mean, that's what Josh is doing, right? He over-improves every one of his units, and as a result, he's waitlisted on all of his properties, and doesn't. And I heard it. He's had to kick a bunch of deadbeats out. He probably could have kept those deadbeats in and not had to expend that amount of money up front, but instead he got them out, took some vacancy, improved the unit, and brought in a better quality tenant. And as a result, his buildings are worth way more money now.
Yeah, and in the long run, it's going to make all the difference between making a profit and making a huge profit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. So last question here. I'm gonna ask you one of your own questions that you brought up. Who do you like, admire, and respect?
I'm not gonna cry, but Gary Keller. There's certain people in this world that when they speak, it just like you internalize it, and it speaks to your soul. Not to get all abstract and mushy, but it just speaks to your soul, and you just are in mental alignment with virtually everything they say. And I'm not saying I agree with everything the guy says, but I couldn't name what I don't agree with right now while we're sitting here. And Gary Keller, I think, is one of the most savvy, influential. I just love his self-awareness. The guy failed once with Keller Williams and fired himself from running it and found a better personality type, someone with more success, with a better personality assessment that took Keller Williams to heights Gary has never even imagined it could get to. And the only reason he did that is he had the self-awareness to realize, I'm not the management personality. That's not me. What I'm good at is masterminding with the best people in this business and taking them to new heights, not running Keller Williams. And his goal for Keller Williams was 50,000 associates. It's 157,000 now. I mean, it's well beyond whatever he ever dreamed it would be. So I think Gary Keller is just absolutely incredible. I love he's just a guy that I put on a pedestal. Who else?
What's it before you go on? What's it like being part of Gary Keller's mastermind group?
We just got into it. I've sat twice with him now, and I'm not a starstruck person by any means. And this might be a little embarrassing to put out on the interweb, but I don't care. Internet. I was there for an expansion mastermind. I raised my hand because, again, that's what I do. I put myself out there and raised my hand, and he locked eyes with me, and we're like 8 feet from each other, and I just started fumbling over my words. I was like, blah, 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 and I said something like completely off of what I was trying to say, and thank God someone a couple of rows behind me translated my mumbo jumbo to something that made sense. And it's humbling. It's definitely humbling, and the guy thinks so big on stuff that once your mind's expanded, it can't contract. And some of the stuff he says, maybe it's 10 years from now, maybe it's 50 years from now, maybe we never achieve it, but some of the stuff, he's just got me thinking bigger than I've ever thought before. So it's incredibly humbling to be a part of it.
Great.
Yeah.
And who else? You're gonna name someone else that you like.
My grandma grew up in Nebraska, and she was I told my son that he comes from a long line of stubborn people, and she grew up in Nebraska in the Depression, and they told her girls don't go to college. Well, that's not an acceptable answer to my grandma. And they grew up poor. She grew up in Nebraska on what she called a dirt farm. I don't know what that means, but she called it a dirt farm. And she moved because girls' school stopped at like 16 or something, so you didn't go to school beyond being a sophomore or something. I'm messing up a bit of the details, but she ended up moving and living in the basement and working for a family so she could live for free so she could finish high school. And so she lived in their basement of these people's house, in the cellar essentially, so she could go to the local school and finish school, because where she grew up, they didn't have where you could finish high school for girls, or maybe just in general. And then she packed up. Basically, she said she got on a train to Chicago with a box and went to a Methodist church college or something along those lines in Chicago. She didn't know anyone. She didn't have barely anything, and she worked full time while going to school to pay her way. And I asked her, I said, Grandma, why didn't you just get, government assistance and student loans? She goes, we didn't have that crap back then. You had to work to go to college. And if you knew my grandma, she throws random voice in flight. You had to work to go to college. And her name's Eula, and she looks like a Eula. She looked like a Eula. And so she, one of the most incredibly determined women. She was a school teacher for 50 years. She taught in Detroit for a while, and she just willed herself to success out of being poor, especially as a female, where you're told you don't go to school, you have kids, and everything else. And she just wasn't willing to accept the status quo. And number three, I'll put my wife on there. She has the ability in which to. You ever met certain people in your life that can just lock in? And they just have the ability in which to get tunnel vision on something. And she's one of the grittiest. If you ever read the book Grit by Angela Duckworth, her grit score is off the charts. She's just one of the grittiest people you'll ever meet. It doesn't matter if she likes it. It doesn't matter if it's something she enjoys doing. If she said she's going to get it done, she's going to get it done. We have a John Deere tractor that I cut our backyard with because our regular guy can't fit his big mower through the fence to get to the backyard. So I cut it like once a month. And she wanted to get it so this tractor could put a mulching blade on it instead of the regular, so that we can pick up all the leaves in our yard. And I'm wrenching on this thing forever. And I said, screw it. I'm just going to hire it. Let's just drive this damn thing to the shop. I don't want to deal with it. And I just threw a temper tantrum and left. And she sat out there and came back in and was like, well, I took care of it. And I'm just like, you got to be kidding. I'm wrenching my life on this thing. And she just stayed out there and worked at it until that bolt came off, and then she put the damn thing back together. And that's just an example and a metaphor for everything else that she does. It doesn't matter if she likes it. It doesn't matter if she's enjoying it. If she says she's going to get it done, she just gets it done. When we were first building this business in 2015, after 13 hours, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go relax for a minute and then go to sleep. And she's like, I still got a couple more hours to knock out. And I'm just like, you're out of your mind. And she just would lock in, dude, and get it done. It doesn't matter if she likes it. She just do it because she wasn't going to let other people down. So she's definitely there.
Yeah, great quality to have and great choices, great people. Joe, how would someone get a hold of you?
Email me. It's just joe@thedeliagroup.com, DELIA. So just joe@thedeliagroup.com. Or my cell phone's 248-933-9462. It's 248-933-9462.
Fantastic. Well, you just really a fascinating conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, and I wish you all the success in the world.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate the time.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.